Hi, it's been a really long time. A couple times this year I got the chance to rewatch Devilman Crybaby, and apparently I had a lot to say about it. And I think that's kind of funny because the first like 6 times I watched it, there wasn't a lot going on in my head other than like, oh my god, Rio and Akira like should bump uglies. My little Fujoshi heart is shitting and peeing and wailing and crying right now. And also like that severe amount of existential dread that you get when you get to the final episode. I didn't really experience anything outside of those two emotions though, the Fujoshi heart and the existential dread. The existential dread that tended to plague me pretty bad after watching the show. I couldn't really put my finger on why until, of course, today. So Devilman Crybaby is a 2018 anime that was based off of Go Nagai's manga series, Devilman. I'm 95% sure that I read the entire manga in college, but I was also high for most of my time in college, so I couldn't tell you completely. But something that I do remember about the manga was the fact that the Devilman adaptation was pretty similar to the manga. And that was something really nice to see considering other adaptations that we've had that absolutely shit on the source material and just completely go off the rails. I'm gonna read this little part straight from Wikipedia itself. Don't knock me for it, as the rest of this video will be my own words and schizophrenic ramblings. The series updates the original 1970s setting to the 21st century, but retains the basic premise of Nagai's manga, following Akira Fudo and his friend Ryo Asuka as they face an ancient race of demons that seek to destroy humanity. Believing the only way to defeat the demons is to obtain their powers, Ryo proposes that Akira unite with the demon. In doing so, Akira transforms into the titular Devilman, gaining the powers of a demon but retaining the soul of a human. The anti-war themes of the original Devilman are reinterpreted as a metaphor for bigotry, in which manipulation and paranoia are discussed using the allegory of the demons as the other. The anime's themes of puberty, sexuality, sex, love, and LGBT identity were explored in critics' analysis of the work, along with the debate over whether the series' perspective and ending are nihilistic. So Devilman Crybaby is one of my favorite animes of all time. It might even be number one considering the fact that I just sat here and wrote a 24-page script expressing my thoughts and emotions while also going into the series with you all. As I previously mentioned when first watching Devilman Crybaby, I had a strong sense of relativity. I could really relate to Akira Fudo. I remember being in college and watching it for the first time so vividly. Me and my roommate were just there, engulfed in the show, to say the least. I might be a sick fuck, but it has everything that my favorite medias usually have, which is a lot of gore, a good amount of sex, and shit that is utterly off-putting. So it was always right up my alley. And then, you know, being a bit of a queer, I also really did appreciate the LGBT representation that the show did have in it. And in 2018, that was a pretty big deal. I also always felt like the representation didn't feel like bullshit, or like pandering bullshit, you know? At the time, and even now, it still stands up pretty well. Representation is really, really important, so long as it's done the right way, considering how many recent flops we've got going on within the last couple years. So from the beginning of the series, Akira was a character that I related to very intensely. And for those of you who don't know, I'm kind of like an emotional mess. I do love to cry for no reason. I'm prone to feeling things pretty intensely and maybe a little bit more than other people. A lot, if not all of the things that Akira experiences emotionally were always things that I could relate to, but it's insane now the way that I can relate to him so much more since I started transitioning. Now that I've been on testosterone for almost a year, holy shit, you guys. I thought I was horny back then. I honestly don't think that my bed is going to make it for much longer. It's lopsided. And as I mentioned before, while my mood has stabilized, I have been hormonal. My emotions have gone down the shitter. And every time I up my dose, that's something that I notice, is this whirlwind of emotions that I once again have to kind of get used to and stabilize. And that's pretty new for me. Every time I think about it, it kind of reminds me of when I was a teenager. So rewatching all of this really did strike some kind of a nerve this time. And these days, through my transition, I've just been telling myself it's a second puberty, which is fucking insane to me that I could be experiencing that at age 25, but hey, that's just life, I guess. And it's so Funny because while rewatching Devilman, there are like these scenes where Akira's like, oh, my body, ever since the transformation, this new body of mine. I'm like, holy shit, he is so trans boy coded. How did they get away with this? I just think it's a little silly because back in the day, I didn't think that I could relate to him any more than I already did. But now that I'm going through my own transformation, it's fucking bananas. So, as you've noticed, I'm talking about myself a lot, and I just want to let you know that while this is a run-through and analysis of Devilman Crybaby, I'm throwing in a lot of my own thoughts, honestly. I'm going to be adding a lot of my personal life, my personal experiences, while adding to the analysis and my speculations and my thoughts on it. And the way that this video started was that I just wanted to rewatch one of my favorite shows, and I remember after getting through like the first episode, I would pick up my phone and like do my little text-to-speech and like say what I was thinking. After I'd gotten through half of the series, I just found myself with paragraphs and paragraphs worth of things that I had to say about the series that I was watching. Ever since starting testosterone, my brain feels a little bit more ADHD and like it's running at 7,000 miles per hour. So lo and behold, after watching the entire series, crying my fucking eyes out, losing my fucking mind, and voicing my thoughts to my phone, I had something. I had 14 pages worth of shit to say. When I began this document, it was just an amalgamation of my emotions, the emotions of the characters, what was going on in the show, and then I thought about my own relationships, forgiveness, self-worth, and the meaning of life itself. That all just culminated into what we'll be talking about today. So thank you for joining me, and with all that out of the way, let's talk about Devilman and the complexities of the human experience. And of course, before we continue, I do have to say, if you like anime and if you don't want to experience all of these spoilers, go watch the show. It's on Netflix. I cannot stress enough that this is one of my favorite shows of all time. Definitely my favorite anime of all time. I implore you to go watch it if you would like to experience this video without having any spoilers. Go watch it and then come back to me. So we're starting right off the bat with episode 1. Our main characters, Ryo and Akira, share a dynamic that's a little too familiar, in my opinion. You have Akira, a timid, overly emotional, and gullible sweetheart. On the other hand, we've got Ryo, the cold, cunning, charismatic, yet psychopathic counterpart. This is shown to us during the opening scene, where young Akira cries over an animal before them that's visibly hurt and in pain. While Akira is saddened over this, Ryo insists that the animal needs to be put out of his misery, which is a pretty grim yet deep thought for a child to be having. When Ryo kills the animal, he questions Akira as to why he's crying, also insisting that the animal was gonna die anyways. Akira, in shambles, exclaims that Ryo is crying too. Of course, this is a cope, as Ryo shows no sign of shedding any tears. Fast forward 10 years into the future, and we see that Akira's grown up and he hasn't changed much. Throughout the series, we notice his inability to hide his emotional side, and in this scene, we see that again, as he overhears about the death of a student he's never met before, going as far as to freak out the classmates when he begins to openly cry in front of them as a result of the news. Akira is still a really fun character though, despite his timidness. He's not necessarily shy or weak. I think he has enough audacity, and a bit of courage as he attempts to stand up for Miki, his love interest and housemate. But the thing is that he's got nothing to back up said courage. That's not in a physical nor a logical aspect either. The thing with Akira is that he just wants to help his friends however he can. And we're gonna talk about Miki more, as she's extremely crucial to the story and basically like the third main character of the series. So within this first scene of getting familiar with Akira and Miki's dynamic, where Akira tries to stand up for Miki even though he's got nothing to back him up, Ryo quite literally comes out of nowhere, pulls out a Glock, shoots at everybody on the boardwalk, causing everyone to scatter. And while everyone in the scene is rightfully freaked out by this, gullible, innocent Akira just jumps into Ryo's hands. Glock still in hand, mind you. So they embrace each other, and Miki's like, who the fuck is this? She doesn't actually say that. But Miki's like, who is this? And Akira insists that Ryo is his childhood friend. The two little fruits jump into Ryo's car and hightail it out of there. Miki screaming after Akira, don't go off with a guy like that, until the two are gone. It's at this point in the car that Ryo begins to explain to Akira a convoluted story about Ryo's time in the Brazilian rainforest. Fala galera! Ryo comes to the conclusion that demons exist, and that they're actually walking Earth amongst them, actively possessing people. By the time the two arrive to their destination, Ryo asks Akira if he would be his right-hand man in hunting the demons down. And Akira's little dumbass insists that he's cool with that. And this is purely because, again, Akira wants to be there for his friends and help this longtime friend. But you might be asking yourself, where exactly did Ryo take Akira in this scene? A place called Sabbath, an alleged hotbed for these demons to possess and congregate. They finally walk into Sabbath, and Ryo comes to the conclusion that the party isn't lit enough. He cracks open a bottle and begins to stab people. This is to cause a chaotic environment, because the chaotic environment is where the demons thrive.
Both the Black Mass and the Sabbath come with blood!
So as blood begins to spill and people are disoriented, the demons do start to appear, and the animation just becomes wacky as hell. There's bouncing boobs, there's bouncing booties transforming into noodle boobs, and just so much more. As the demons are taking control of the party, Akira is running around like a chicken without a head. And it's at this point that Ryo calls out to the demon Amon, asking this demon to possess Akira. Amon is essentially one of the most powerful demons ever. What was he doing at this party, one might ask? But more on that later. So Amon does possess Akira, and Devilman is born. The kicker and what makes Akira special is the fact that despite being possessed, he still manages to retain the heart of a human. So because of this little tip, as opposed to Akira being completely possessed and actively causing harm and chaos, he still holds his own thoughts, emotions, and feelings while gaining the powers and physical abilities of a devil, which is so fucking cool. In the next episode, of course, Akira has this totally epic demon body. He's more attractive. He's eating absolutely everything. He's eating. Girls love him, he's physically fit, and finally, after everybody's done gawking at him while he has the time of his life, he runs into the rappers from episode 1 for a brief moment with intentions of retrieving the book bag that Miki left on the dock the day prior. In a confrontation with the boys, Akira one-shots all of them, and then he marvels at his own strength until he's caught red-handed by Miki. And it's in that moment that reality really sets in for Akira. He realizes that his body and its transformation is not normal as he shamefully flees the scene. He runs from Miki, he takes his bike up to visit Ryo, and he questions what has happened to his body and if the transformation is in fact a result of him becoming a devil. Fear, anxiety, and disbelief, that's quelled by Ryo in the next scene because of course Akira trusts him and trusts his word. So while they're talking about everything that happened at Sabbath the previous night and what's going to happen from here on out, Ryo explains that now since Akira has his new body, there are demons afoot who need to be eradicated and exposed. This being Akira's new job as he physically has the means to do so, while still retaining a human state of mind. So later on in the episode, Ryo and Akira decide to take a ride and go demon hunting. At some point, Ryo says, "I'm sorry for dragging you into all of this," to which Akira replies with a smile,
"I've been dragged into this ever since we met!"
Which is so fucked up, and this is where I'm about to go into those schizophrenic ramblings that I mentioned, the ones that I integrate into the video. But Akira and Ryo's dynamic, as we will come to find out, is a golden example of a relationship between two specific kind of people. We've got like Akira, the chronic people pleaser, certified golden retriever, versus Ryo's toxic energy sucking ass, whom latches on to people who are gullible or have a lot of energy to give until they can't anymore. At first, everything is relatively normal in Akira's life, but the moment that Ryo's crazy ass shows up, within literally less than 2 hours, Ryo manages to get Akira possessed by a demon, brings him to the fucking strip club, and now Akira's embarking on this fucking epic journey to slay demons. This is within 2 hours of meeting up with Ryo again. Something that technically he had no control over because Ryo just pulls up out of the blue anyways. And why? Why is it that Akira goes through with all of this? It's because he loves and he trusts Ryo, okay? He sees the good in Ryo, even though nobody at the pier that day could see that same good. And why is Ryo dragging Akira into all of this in the first place? Well, it's because he's a closeted homosexual, but we'll talk more about that later. So Ryo is just taking full advantage of Akira's innocence and the fact that he is gullible and trusting. I'm sure that the moment Ryo wanted to put this demon slaying plan into place, Akira's face popped up in his head as somebody who wouldn't ask questions and who would just go along with whatever Ryo would be proposing. Something that's absolutely bizarre to me is the fact that in episode 2, Ryo tells Akira that being possessed and having this new body and change to maneuver is a good thing, and that Akira and his abilities can be used positively for Ryo's big plan. But plot twist and spoiler alert, Ryo is not doing any of this with good intentions, and we'll soon come to find out that all of this has actually been meticulously orchestrated by Ryo since the very beginning of involving Akira in this plot. Something that we're going to be talking a lot about in this video is innocence, and before Ryo's involvement in the series, we're shown that Akira was pretty bliss in his life, and pretty bliss through his innocence. The second he became possessed, however, there was some kind of switch. Akira's looks were not the only thing that changed. His attitude, his behavior, in a way, became more rash, cool, and even quite literally bonkers, as Akira was going as far as to watch porn in the middle of his school on the projector in the auditorium. Even his conversation with Ryo when they're catching up is more adult as he asks questions and learns more about his predicament. And Akira is definitely aware of this change in innocence or lack thereof too, because later on in the same episode, Miki is on the phone with this creepy photographer who takes pictures of swimsuit models. And while he's on the phone with her, Akira overhears and with his newfound awareness takes the phone from Miki, telling her that man is trying to take advantage of your innocence. To which Miki looks at Akira and replies, "What's so wrong with being innocent?" Which is some really fucked up foreshadowing, but I digress. So at the end of this episode, Ryo and Akira they're running the streets. They are running these streets, and they find a demon to kill. But in the process, the two are made aware that the killing was recorded. Not only was the killing recorded, but Akira's transformation into Devilman was also recorded. And that ends episode 2. So as we start episode 3, Akira obviously is fearful of being outed as a demon, which he now could be considering the fact that somebody out there has a recording of his transformation. And I don't know if I mentioned this or if I will mention it, but if not, I think the person who records that footage is actually the swimsuit model photographer guy. So Ryo is explaining the consequences and what will happen if Akira does end up being outed, to which Akira replies, "Well, I am a devil, right?" And Ryo consoles Akira, holding him in an embrace, telling him not to worry. Ryo says that he will protect Akira, and that Akira just needs to trust him. And this part devastates me. It shakes me to my absolute core, because Ryo is explaining all of these consequences of Akira being outed as a devil, but all it's doing is just making Akira feel this unnecessary guilt for being a demon, which is a predicament that Ryo put him in. Yes, Akira, you are a devil, but it's not your fault. It's just sad. Through this weird, toxic dynamic that Ryo and Akira have, there is this theme of fixing what isn't broken. While we didn't get a massive look at Akira's life before Ryo enters it, the glimpses we caught taught us again that before the transformation, Akira was fine. He was a normal teenager living his life without a care in the world. The way that being a teenager kind of should be, only to become a hybrid man-demon who's been transformed at the hands of his best friend. Ryo broke Akira, in a sense. A normal teenage boy. He took Akira's innocence and had him possessed by a demon in the middle of a strip club. And Ryo's advantage over Akira now is his knowledge of the demons, which he's shoved into Akira's brain from the moment the two got reacquainted. He didn't even ask how his day was. And this is after years of no contact with each other. So at this point of the story, Akira, by the hands of Ryo, is broken. And Akira feels that. He truly believes by that one vital line, "I am a demon, aren't I?" Now that we took that little detour, let's continue wrapping up episode 3. Towards the end of this episode is where Akira's really starting to understand that something is desperately wrong with Ryo. In hopes of finding the footage that the photography guy took of Akira's transformation, Ryo breaks into the man's house. breaks into his house. He lives with his mother, who is an elderly lady, and Akira does think that Ryo is taking it way too far by going into this woman's house while she is actively asking him not to. But right before they leave, Ryo throws money at the old lady. That's so fucking funny. Ryo throws money at the old lady. Akira smiles with relief in this moment. And maybe I'm going insane and looking into it a little bit too much, but I think his relief comes from the idea that there still is good in Ryo, even though Akira's having his doubts finally. Like, no matter how crazy all of this may seem, at least Ryo did that. We all know that when you're like a people pleaser or someone who's generally like empathetic, you tend to see the good in people. That usually results in you excusing their erratic behavior, which I think we see like a perfect example of that in this scene. I had to point that out, because when I saw that, I was like, oh my god. I got some flashbacks. I got some Vietnam flashbacks. And so, Ryo and Akira are on the hunt to find the photographer. And also in this scene, like, the photographer invites over Miki in hopes of interrogating Miki about Akira potentially being a devil because he has this footage. And he's certain that Akira is the devil transforming in his video. And then I don't even have this in the script, but a whole bunch of wacky shit happens. Miki gets possessed by a devil. Akira has to go and save her. But at the end of this episode is where, like, Ryo and Akira have a bit of a beef. They have their very first argument. The married couple has their very first fight. Oh my god, so much happened. I can't believe I didn't write about this. Ryo ends up murdering the photography guy in cold blood. They do end up getting the footage. They definitely do. But then Akira's like, yo, what the fuck is wrong with you, bro? Why would you kill him? Like, he's a person. And Ryo's like, I do not give a fuck. I do not give a fuck. I don't care. I don't give a fuck. He's dead. I killed him. It gets really grim, and he's like, nobody could know the truth about what you are, so he had to die. And then Ryo straight up tries to kill Miki. And obviously, that's Akira's girl. So he's like, bitch, what the fuck? And the reason he wants to kill Miki is because there's also a chance that Miki might know that Akira's a devil, and the secret can't get out. Absolutely fucking insane. I can't believe I didn't write that in the script. But that's how that episode ends. Nothing serious comes of it. Obviously, Ryo does not kill Miki. Akira doesn't let that shit happen. So in episode 4, we are introduced to Akira's parents in a way. We come to learn that the reason that Miki and Akira are housemates, the reason that Akira stays with Miki's family, is because Akira's parents are constantly traveling for their job. Their neglectful asses are traveling for work, so they just leave their son with family friends. But the family's chill. Like, Miki's family's dope as fuck. Like, they basically love him like their own. And I will say, the family consists of a mom and dad, Miki's parents, Taro, which is Miki's little brother, and then there's Miki, and then Akira stays with them. Now, this episode starts where the last one finished, after Akira essentially saves Miki from being possessed, and when Ryo and Akira are having their first argument, Akira's phone rings after having saved Miki, and Ryo comments on it being his mother, because he set Akira's phone up that way. Akira's mother leaves a voicemail explaining that she's worried and that she hasn't heard from Akira's father. And to make matters even more manipulative, Ro says to Akira that he shouldn't be trusting his mom, and that what she's saying might be a ploy or a farce. He continues to go as far as saying that Akira shouldn't trust Miki, or anybody but him for that matter, by saying, and I quote, "The only person you should trust from now on is me." Like any true manipulator, the more that Ryo has the fear of Akira branching off and developing sentient thoughts of his own, he needs to reel Akira back in with the fear-mongering that becomes more over the top and frantic. But this does quell Akira for a little while longer, as the next day he meets up with Ryo once more. So this is a little like random, but in this episode, like, while we're familiarizing ourselves with Akira's parents and like Akira's having memories and stuff, there's this one scene, like this memory that Akira has of his dad of his dad saying, "Come follow us when you grow up, we'll be waiting." And I'm so sorry, like, I'm so fucking deceased over these neglectful ass parents. And it's the both of them too. It's not like one or the other, like they're both fucking neglectful. Not even one of them thought like, oh, I have a child, like I should attempt to be like I should take up that responsibility and like be around my kid. I should be present to take care of my child. No, not a single thought about that. It's not even like Akira has any siblings. These parents only have one responsibility that they brought into this world, and they can't they're not even willing to be around for it. The two of them collectively could give less of a shit. It's fucking insane, dude. It's absolutely fucking insane. Tattoos looking dope, bruh. At some other point in this episode, we spend a small moment with Miko and one of the kids from the rap group that I mentioned. And Miko is basically one of the kids that they go to school with. She's on the track team. Later on, we get more of a story about her, but little background is that she's jealous of Miki. So after all this, we get to the real meat and potatoes of the episode. Also realizing that Akira's mom, her name is Kaori, which is the name of Tetsuo's girlfriend in Akira. Interesting. But speaking of Akira's mom, she's getting off a flight to be a decent mother and meet up with her son. Now remember, she didn't know where Dad was. Well, poof, here's Dad. Mom gets ambushed by Dad, and Dad is possessed by a demon. Dad is terrorizing the entire travel bus that Mom was on. He's ripping people's heads off. He's murdering motherfuckers left and right like it's a thing to do. And he ends his killing spree by stabbing Mom. We also go back real quick to Miko explaining to the rapper that her name is actually Miki, but that she doesn't go by that name because Miki already has it. And Miko, again, is pretty jealous of Miki, thinking that she's way better than her at everything, and that she's essentially living in Miki's shadow. The rapper tells her that that isn't true, and it's a sweet scene, but counterpart to that, Akira and Ryo are realizing that something is obviously wrong at the airport while they were waiting for Akira's parents to pull up. So they're following Mom's location, and when they find her, she's a part of this demon that's just like harboring these dead bodies, and the bodies are like able to speak. So Akira has to listen to and see his parents as this fucked up ass creature. And then he hears his dad say that like he wanted to eat his mom. And after hearing that, Akira transforms into Devilman out of anger. In this scene, Akira tries to convince his father to fight the demon who is possessing him, to be a Devilman like Akira, but it doesn't work. So Ryo shoots a child in the scene. Akira's mom begs for Akira to kill her and the demons that she's attached to, and while he has a flashback of like the 5 memories that he's had with his parents, he finishes it, killing the demon. The final scene of this episode is Miko and the rapper out at Sabbath when a demon pops up and possesses Miki, presumably, but we do find out that she is possessed. Now we're at episode 5. We open to Akira being unbearably horny, and I felt that. We also have to witness his wet dreams and the infamous cum cannon. It's confirmed that Miko is a devil now, and she looks for Miki, intent on proving that she is now better than Miki with these newfound devil powers. Later on, we can see Akira losing his grip on reality as he shows up to Ryo's doorstep covered in blood after killing a demon.
Ryo! What am I supposed to do? What should I do?
And needing to do so with his newfound bloodlust that is coming with being a demon. I wanted to kill. I couldn't control myself, but at the same time I feel so sad and I want to scream. It's like I'm a baby. I literally had to write this line down. I had to go on a small tangent because damn, yo, testosterone was kicking my ass about 2 or 3 weeks ago. As I mentioned earlier, it happens every time they up my dose. Akira here is experiencing so many intense changes, and it's not even like he could just be a teenager. He has to be hormonal, possessed, attempting to restore the world that he's living in thanks to this newfound chaos. And the saddest part is that he's doing it all alone as Ryo just throws money at him and tells him to learn from humans by distracting himself, as humans tend to do by means of sex, drugs, and gambling. What kind of a fucking friend are you? Real great friendship skills, Ryo. You're doing fucking amazing. I just feel like that part resonated with me so severely while I'm also going through these fucked up crazy changes, and my body is like constantly trying to settle and readjust itself on top of the many fears and worries that I have in my everyday life. With like the use of testosterone, I have a lot of pent up energy, and also this shit makes it really hard to cry. So there are days where I come home, days where something happens, and I just want to cry and cry until I throw up and my eyeballs fall out of my skull, but it's kind of hard because the testosterone makes it hard to cry, you know? So I end up taking Ryo's advice and distracting myself with some form of bullshit, which is a work in progress. I'm trying to work on that. Whenever I'm overwhelmed or having really bad thoughts, I try to be productive. Lately I've been training martial arts. I've been doing the jiu-jitsu, and that's been pretty helpful and conducive to my fragile mental and hormonal state. But I digress. So there's a small scene that happens that displays Miki's ability to be the voice of reason while having empathy for all parties involved. And then we jump right back into Akira being unbearably horny as he walks around what I think is like a red light district. And I get it, it happens to me at least 3 times a week. He's lured in by Silene. Now it sounds like they say Cyrene, but the name is Silene. Okay, you're just gonna have to bear with me here. The entire time I pronounce her name Silene because that's how Netflix captions were spelling it at the time, and I don't know why the fuck I went with that instead of just calling her Cyrene, which is what everybody calls her and what her actual name is. Just bear with me, my brain doesn't work properly, and this is basically an example of that. I don't know where I got it in my head that her actual name was Silene instead of Cyrene. I don't know where I got that information, but sorry, and I have brain damage. But she's a demon who's been lurking since episode 1 with the intent to get her hands on Amon and get a little freaky. All throughout the series, up until this point, it's implied that Cyrene has some sort of romantic involvement with Amon in the past or as demons in the demon world. Now, I need you to listen very closely. Akira is lured in and they start fucking. It's moments like this in the series where I'm just blown away and fascinated by how outrageous this fucking show is. And also, one of my favorite things about this show is like how unserious it is until it's not. And then like what's coming begins to reveal itself little by little until it hits you like a truck. So Akira and Silene are going at it like a couple of rambunctious rascals until it turns into an all-out brawl while they're fucking. And I think they're fucking in the air at some point too. So Silene's partner is visibly upset by this, as throughout the series it's been made a little bit obvious that despite the fact that Silene and her partner are demons, he might have feelings for her. And in this scene it shows as he's like unable to watch his girl getting literally banged and simultaneously ravagely attacked in this intense ass battle. So while Silene is attempting to recuperate as she bleeds out for a moment from this wild battle she's having with Amon / Akira, the partner jumps in and tells Silene to merge with him, therefore granting her his strength. Akira's watching this go on, and mind you, he isn't necessarily unscathed either. He's also bloody and battered and barely recuperating. So Silene questions her partner saying, if we merge, you die. And he's like, I know. And she's like, well, why would you do such a thing? Leading to this scene where he says, Silene, even bloodied, you are beautiful. And bitch, I'm getting emotional. I can't believe it. Oh my god, why did I just get emotional? I'm going through a lot in life right now. Please, if I get emotional in this video, don't fucking look at me. Bitch, it is intense, okay? So I know I didn't mention these characters up until now, but like again, there have been like small little scenes of them since episode 1. And even though those scenes haven't been like a lot, I just can't help but to feel like so emotional with these characters and everything that has built up to this moment. I feel really emotional for the partner like laying down his life because he loves this woman. He loves this demon. Okay? And I feel such sadness for the twinkle and tears in Silene's eyes with the realization that he would do something like that for her. That he would give essentially his life to help her and then call her beautiful still, despite the fact that she's been obsessing with Amon the entire time and is now essentially destroyed by him. The craziest part is that Akira sees all of this happen. He's watching all of this. Silene agrees to the merging, and the scene ends. The next morning, Riel finds Akira, like, dead. He's, like, asleep on the floor. He literally knocked the fuck out mid-battle. And he carries him to the site of Silene and the partner, Kaim, now one, frozen, as she died right before getting to finish Akira off. In both ways, I guess. Akira stares at the site, absolutely fascinated, and he asks Riel if demons are capable of love. A pause for dramatic effect. And it's obvious he's asking this because of that intense ass moment that he witnessed the night before. Riel's musty ass says it's highly unlikely as demons are only concerned on killing and wreaking havoc. But even in the moment and having witnessed what he did, Akira disagrees, saying, to me, it looked like love. Bitch, When I saw that, bro, I had goosebumps everywhere, bro. And you guys saw I got a little emotional. This is one of my favorite episodes of the entire fucking series. It's got all of my favorite things: sex, blood, existential conversation, what it is to be loved, to be in love. If a certain kind of being is even capable of loving. Just really amazing stuff, dude. Give it up for episode 6. I think we're halfway through the series. We're a little more than halfway through the series, but we're formally being introduced to a character that, again, we've seen in news article and segments since episode 1. Like, we've heard about him through the grapevine. The high school athlete Coda, who, as we find out in the scene, also happens to be a devil. Coda is having sex with a guy, and in the middle of having sex with a guy, he transforms and rips the guy's head off. But he's crying while it's happening. It's obviously a very emotional scene, and because of that, we do find out that he's a devil. Not just any devil, though. A devil man. Okay, don't hurt him. Okay. We go to Ryo's house, and the little shitster is off his fucking rocker again as he feeds Akira a potion that, upon consumption, turns you into your devil form if you are possessed. And his plan is to blow the lid off these demon shenanigans for good by giving Coda this potion, therefore turning him into a demon in front of everyone during this widely broadcasted track meet that is going on later in the day. So there's this special little scene that I'm gonna ramble about for a minute. It's this one where Akira meets Coda. They're in the locker rooms, and upon meeting Coda for the first time, Akira approaches him and he's crying. Like, he's ugly crying. Like, tears are coming down his face. He looks fucking crazy. Strangely, he looks at Coda and tells him, "You were crying at the airport, and you're crying now. I can see it." But Coda has no tears to show for this. So while people are flaming Akira, like, bro, what the fuck are you talking about? Coda has, like, a visceral reaction and assaults Akira. He throws him into a locker room until Ryo's busted ass breaks it up. We learn that Coda being very sad, the way that Akira is accusing him of being sad and crying, is true, because in this episode, Coda, before the race, watches a video of his late best friend and presumed lover, Junichi, to which he cries intensely and transforms into his demon form. And I have so much to say about it, but we will talk about it in a later scene. So, back to episode 6, Coda and Ryo get introduced, and in the girls' locker room, Miko makes a bet with Miki on her name. If Miko wins the race, she gets to have the name Miki, as a stance to no longer live in Miki's shadow. And Miki's beautiful, precious ass is all for it. It's also just really funny because in this scene, Miko's tits are out, like they're out. And I'm like, yeah, like she is being a hater, but I don't know, like something about that is just like girl activity. Like she's one of the girls. She's one of the girlies. She's for the girlies too. Then again, I don't even really know like what girls do in like locker rooms, because for me in high school, I had my face shoved into a locker to avoid like looking at people because I'm a fat. So what did you know? Ryo makes Coda drink that laced ass water with that potion that makes you turn into a demon on command. And after some of this, during the race, Akira and Coda have a brief conversation about how Akira knows what Coda is going through, being that there's a demon inside of him as well, and every day he feels he's on the edge of just exploding and fucking shit up. While they're running, there's this point where Coda asks Akira how he could have possibly known that he was sad, how he could have possibly known what Coda was feeling or what he was going through. And Akira says that it's simply because of the fact that he's the same way. And this is like that tangent that I'm gonna go on now that I mentioned earlier. Like, Akira knows how humans are. He can feel their pain. And it's also kind of funny the way that Akira could sniff out people's emotions. And I think it's because he's so authentically like real and upfront about his own emotions. When he's sad, he's sad. When he's angry, when he's horny, when he's weak, and of course when he cries, like, he feels all of that. He's aware of all of that. It doesn't matter who's around or who's there to see him with these heavy emotions. And it doesn't even matter if he's making a spectacle of himself. He feels everything and he's not ashamed. He's not hiding from that. He wears his heart on his sleeve and he will show you that. And it might freak you out, but it might be because you're looking into a mirror. Similarly to how Coda freaked out and shoved him into a locker earlier in the episode. Having Akira tell Koda about himself so blatantly couldn't have been easy to hear through this attempted like tough guy demeanor that he's constantly upholding. But it was true, and Akira was right. Like a therapist in a therapy session, or a tarot card reader who's like really good at their job. Now, here's something that I've realized. The crazy thing about the human mind, human connection, and experiences, and this is important to note in the era of hyper-individuality, is that at our core, we all experience the same emotions, even if it's different constants and variables, even if we all are leading completely different lives. We're all vulnerable and we're all lonely. All of us are in need of attention. We're all searching for something as well because we all need a meaning, and we thrive off and live for said meaning or meanings. Even someone who is a diagnosed narcissist sociopath needs a reason to keep going or wreaking havoc in life. Since the dawn of time, and especially now with technology taking over, we all feel so lonely, lost, and misunderstood, which you think it wouldn't be that case because of the fact that we could connect with so many different people over the internet, but at the same time we lose that in our real lives, which is objectively the most important because it's right in front of us. And I personally relate to this. Me being trans, I always felt like an alien. I always felt like some kind of creature or some kind of monster. But the interesting thing about that is I spent a lot of time originally just pushing away the fact or the idea that other people were like me or experiencing exactly what I was experiencing. And because of that, I alienated myself because I didn't think I was worthy of having this shared struggle or experience, or for others to have compassion for me. I thought I was so far gone, like a lost cause that couldn't be saved. But once I started to get help and kind of just like look at the world around me and try to be more present, while also considering the things that I've done in this life, the way that I've affected others and the way that they've affected me, it's honestly just helped me to be able to see that I am worthy of being understood, and that I also can relate to other people more often than I'm aware of. That within itself helps me to connect with others, and I do think that that's what the human connection is all about, to be able to put all of our differences aside and acknowledge that we all experience a similar struggle. We're all looking for something, and we're all just really trying our hardest to survive. And it's hard, and that's where the nuance comes in. You know, I often think about the end-all be-all of things, and also how these characters fall into this conversation of being able to connect with each other despite the chaos going on in this world. This relatability that we have between Akira and Koda is important for that reason, because in this moment where Koda thinks that he's alone, along with those vulnerable moments of Akira coming to terms with the fact that he is a devil, really brings these two together in seeing on a similar level. Despite what they may have been through in life, despite their sexuality, despite their differences, despite their dreams and aspirations, there is this level of relatability that causes a profound connection, even if just in this moment. But of course, the reason this anime is so important is because moments like this are echoed throughout the chaos of the show, because as you will see after this episode, things really do start to get chaotic. Now granted, and I think a sad thing is that one way or another, people choose their paths, right? It's plain to see by the beginning, Akira's intention and his plan is to take whatever pain that he's experiencing through being a devil and convert it into something helpful. And we see this in this scene as he is trying to help Koda and show him that he can relate and understand his emotions. On the other half, we have Ryo, who is taking an unspoken pain, which we will discuss more later, and turning it into chaos and trying to just find a way to make things worse and worse for not only the people in the world around him, but himself. Wrapping this up, I just want to reiterate that in this show and in our own lives, compassion, understanding, and relatability that we share as humans and as a species is extremely important. And I love that this show constantly drills that away deep into our brains. And that's what this scene between Akira and Koda remind me of. And again, we do see that as Koda's demeanor changes thanks to Akira's words. It's a short breakthrough as Koda Koda now realizes that he's not alone as a demon and through the tumultuous emotions he's experiencing, until Ryo implements his plan and all hell breaks loose. Akira tries to stop Ryo, but it has already begun. We go into a scene that gives me goosebumps. Koda transforms and goes on a murderous rampage at the hands of his demon, but in hysterics, in tears, as he does not want this to be happening. He does not want to hurt people. So while everyone's trying to turn off the broadcast, musty, pacey, cracker-ass Ryo insists on continuing the broadcast, to which he makes his debut in telling the world that demons are real. They are evil, and that there can be one right beside you. And with this, we see the tides of the entire world begin to change. Some people are saying that the video and live stream is fake, and other people are freaking the actual fuck out. On the flip side, the plan was for Akira to kill Koda once he was let out of the arena. Akira lies to Ryo, telling him that Koda has been killed, but he turns around, transforms into Devilman, and tells Koda that he is not a demon nor man, and that he will save him. So episode 7 starts with our favorite boys rapping over a beat, and we truly see that the world has devolved into absolute chaos since the revelation of demons existing. No one is eating out, there are tanks in the streets, extremist groups intent on killing demons, people have died, things are on severe lockdown, and the boys are rapping about how this fear-mongering has led to people pointing fingers on who is or who isn't a demon, while also challenging the idea of the demons, saying that a lot of the shit that demons are being accused of doing is shit that humans do anyways and have been doing. Steal, destroy, murder, spy, no rules apply, stacking paper by dirty deeds where you and I can't see. But look, tons of people in the world doing that, actually. So what's the dilly up in here? You and I, demons. Demons and I. How we gonna draw the line? Don't nobody nowhere know the difference no more. The entire rap is like amazing. I love these little segments that they do of the kids rapping. It's so fucking cool. And it also dives into the situation a little bit more while also describing the current state of the world. And also this is like, it's like a little COVID moment. Like, can I say that word? Like, am I allowed to say this cute little COVID moment? The way that everything's like shut down and everyone's pointing fingers. Like, do you have COVID? Did you give me COVID? You have COVID? Okay, time to burn you at the stake. You gave me COVID? Okay, I'm gonna kill you. I also feel like with any good like show or form of media, there is always this point where there's like no turning back. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, do you ever feel that way? Like in BioShock Infinite, once Elizabeth goes through that tear, once Elizabeth and Booker go through that tear, like, there's no turning back. Like, shit is forever changed. Do you feel me? Like, shit is all like silly and cute, and then it's not. Also in Berserk, when Guts like disbands from the Band of Hawk to like go do his own thing, like, things are changed forever. There's the turning point and shit is changed forever. Like, shit is not silly and funny anymore. The exposure of the demons in this show is that turning point where everything drastically takes a turn. Like, it was unserious and now it's getting a little serious laugh. So after we hear the rap, Ryo, we see, is trying really hard to strengthen the gap between humans and demons by saying that the humans will triumph and kill all those dirty-ass evil demons. It's giving very much protecting our race. Akira knows, though, that this is wrong and that this seriously wasn't his intention since partnering up with Ryo. So Akira calls Ryo and tries to tell him that a human was killed in vain for no reason, and Ryo has no reaction. The fact that he has no reaction upsets Akira greatly. Ryo rambles about how Akira needs to stay complicit and do nothing while the world burns and humans and demons alike are being murdered. He describes it as a necessary evil, and Akira is in disbelief. After hanging up, Akira goes to visit Koda, who has been hiding since everything hit the fan. Akira's been keeping him hidden and protected and bringing him food. Like, I love you. Like, I love you, Akira. I literally love you. Sweet boy. So after this scene, Akira's housemates, Miki's dad and little brother, read the Bible. And they're reading a part that basically explains that war and fighting fire with fire is blatantly wrong. Miki's little brother Taro is looking a little under the weather. When he asks what's supposed to be done if fighting demons isn't the answer, Miki says love. Taro asks if love is strong enough, and Miki says it's the strongest in the whole world. Why am I getting emotional? Later on, we also see Miki making this post on social media that reads, "It's easy to give people the cold shoulder. It's harder to try and understand them. Even family members who you've been with your whole life will show a whole new side to them. no matter how hard you hope for it. When I think about possibly not being able to understand someone, I get really sad. But I want to understand. I'll find the courage to believe. I'll try not to judge people just because I want to feel secure. Oh my god, I'm gonna kill myself. Both these scenes together really do drive home a chunk of Miki's character, being that she's so well-intentioned but also really fucking innocent. She is the epitome in this series of someone who sees the good in all kinds of people and all kinds of situations. We see this from the beginning of the series as she shows concern for Akira, concern even for the pervy photographer who only used her to take advantage of her. She sees good in the group of young rappers, the one time earlier in the series that they almost got framed for robbery. And she even saw good in those dumb-ass pig cops who almost shot the boys due to their own negligence as unreliable-ass police officers. And all that to say that Miki's innocence is really beautiful and profound, but the world that they're living in is delving deeper into an unforgiving one, no matter how much hope she has. So getting back to episode 7, we learn very briefly that Miko was the one who killed one of the rappers, Cocoon, the same guy who she went to Sabbath with the one night that she got possessed. At least that's what I think happened, and most likely a result of her transformation. I'm not really sure. I did look online and see that people agree and state that she probably couldn't control herself the way that Koda couldn't control himself with his lover, and that makes the most sense considering before her possession she did actually like Cocoon. Moving on, Miki almost gets assaulted and is saved by the rap group again. Akira tries to unsuccessfully save and recruit a demon that gets ass blasted by the military. Miko and Koda meet up, confronting the fact that they're both demons, and Taro gets really hungry while looking at a dog on the street, and he eats it. Then we get a special treat. Ryo and Akira are finally about to break up. Akira finally confronts Ryo about everything that's been going on, and Ryo's musty, pasty, mayonnaise-looking ass goes off on a wild tangent about how humans are weak as fuck and afraid as fuck, that they're bound to self-destruct with the revelations of demons being amongst them. He goes as far as to insult Akira by asking him what he possibly thinks he could do on his own to stop humanity from killing itself off, as it's too late to save the planet from its current state. He even tells Akira not to get too confident. Literally fucking bananas. But finally, Akira puts his foot down, okay? He puts it down, zonzue. He tells Ryo that humanity will not kill itself off, that he knows that there are Devilmen, and that he will find them. And this is where reality finally sets in for Ryo. He's now frantically trying to get Akira to stay, and to not go through with this plan. He says to Akira, "I didn't make you a Devilman so that you could go on your own. No, Ryo. You did it because you wanted to take advantage of your friend who loved you wholeheartedly." The second that Akira starts realizing that Ryo is a complete psychotic evil asshole who is the antithesis of absolutely reveling in senseless chaos, he decided to walk the fuck out of the door because he didn't want to deal with Ryo's fucking crazy ass anymore. This is the moment where Akira is realizing not only his self-worth, but also the worth of every single human. And this is where Ryo says to himself that his plan has backfired, which is true now that Akira is no longer his pawn. And interestingly, Ryo turns to his Bible, opens up a page that lands on Revelation, talking about how Satan and God had a battle that Satan lost, causing Satan to create an army of demons when he was banished, and then coming back to wreak havoc on the world, only for God's army to beat Satan and his demons again. Interesting. Back to Taro. With Mom's discovery of Taro being part devil, she decides to run away and seek refuge in an attempt to protect not only Taro, but also the rest of the family. Miki's dad is on the search to find them. He says goodbye to Miki and Akira one final time, asking Miki to stay at the house in case Taro and Mom come back, while telling Akira that he's changed. "Uncle, be safe," Akira says, and Dad replies saying that he will be because God is with him. Bitch, I'm gonna start fucking crying again, I can't do this shit. As Akira, Miki, and the rap kids watch the news, shit really is hitting the fan politically, as nuclear weapons are getting involved. A group of government officials who also happen to be demons are ready to cause some chaos when a mysterious light overcomes the scene. While Taro and Mom are at a refugee camp church, the priest tells the story about Sodom and Gomorrah, how God stepped in by raining fire down and destroying everything. And then we got this big ass fucking light that just randomly hit the evil ass demons who were trying to nuke everything. And then we have Ryo experiencing a full-on mental fucking episode due to this news of that crazy-ass light hitting the Earth. So now let's go to episode 8. Everything for Ryo is falling the fuck apart. He's sunk the world into chaos and Armageddon, and the only person on Earth that he seemed to have trust, who loved him for him and wholeheartedly, has left him high and fucking dry, and it's doing something to him. As he reflects on his poor decisions, he questions himself, and he asks why exactly he's done all of this for. He says, "That's it, I must know myself," which is also the name of the episode, and this is where shit gets trippy as fuck, bitch. While Ryo embarks on a journey of self-discovery, Dad is on the search to find Mom and Taro, to which he finally gets a full grasp of what the world has come to. It's brutal, and he gets traumatized pretty quickly. So he takes a gun from a dead guy and carries on to find his family, and when he finally finds his family, it's brutal. He gets to the refugee camp, and to find his wife, he phones Taro and follows the sound of the ringing. When he arrives at the tent, there's a demon actively eating his wife. And when the ringing stops, and Taro's voice can be heard through the voicemail, he breaks down, realizing that Taro's the one consuming his own mother. Taro is crying, as does his father, and it's a heartbreaking scene, dude. The dad exclaims that Taro is no longer his son, but he can't bring himself to kill Taro as he's implied he would do so. The military then rolls up, guns blazing, and when dad tells them not to shoot because his son is in the tent, the guns go off, killing the father immediately, along with the rest of the family. Akira appears at the scene and attempts to save his family, but ultimately ends up burying them. While he also attempts to mourn the loss of his family, he's ambushed by a group of demons, exclaiming that Amon needs to be awakened as they beat Akira to a bloody pulp. Psycho Jenny, however, which is Ryo's sexy, like, fucking accountant, I don't know, well, she's a demon, she pulls up and says that Akira cannot be killed as someone forbids it. I wonder who that could be. So in this scene, when Akira's getting his shit kicked in and Jenny pulls up to break it up, Miko and Koda pull up to help Akira, but in the middle of it, when Miko is trying to save Akira, Koda tells the demons that he'll join them, despite the fact that he has a human heart, and the demons are dubious about his proposition to say the least, but he goes on with them anyways, which is so fucked up, like, fuck you, Koda. On Ryo's end, he goes all the way to Peru to find out answers about his past, and realizes that he's lived a much longer life than he'd ever realized before now, but more on that later. Akira has to break the news to Miki about the state of her family, and in this devastating scene, Miki goes to her room and cries, and Akira does the same where he stands. So fucked up. Now, this next scene is insane. Everybody gets a notification for some breaking news. On the television are several men sitting at a table, and Ryo is one of them. And boy, is Akira happy to see him. Like, just chipper, jolly. He's exclaiming that Ryo is going to do the right thing by debunking all the fear-mongering surrounding the demons and bringing the people and demons together. However, Ryo says that a person can become a demon by merely being dissatisfied with life, and that the best way to handle this is by eradicating the demons before they transform, aka killing literally anybody who's upset about anything, mentally ill, troubled, or has slightly changed from the person that they quote-unquote used to be, which is insane and a literal recipe for disaster when you think about it, because humans are fickle. They are always and constantly changing. But of course, Ryo knows that, and to light some candles on top of what already is a shit cake, Ryo uses his best friend Akira Fudo as the prime example of a dissatisfied human that turned demon. And then he provides this fucking whack-ass video, yo. This whack-ass video that he cut and snipped up of Akira, like, transforming and turning into a demon. But he makes it look like Akira's the one who slaughtered everybody at Sabbath and, like, couldn't control himself. Like, it's edited to look like he enjoyed every single part of being a demon, to make it look like he killed everybody at Sabbath and enjoyed every moment of it. Like, are you fucking kidding me? As though we couldn't possibly despise Ryo's ghetto ass even more, it's absolutely shocking how far he ends up taking things. Akira watches in horror, and mind you, he's in the group right now. Like, he's hanging out. I think Miki is still upstairs crying, and then he's like with the rap kids. And Akira's watching this in horror. He's like exclaiming that all of this is a lie, and we the viewer, we know that it is, but in a brief moment, all the others in the room are doubtful and armed, as Miko is prepared to defend Akira, and as he tries to explain to the others why he isn't a demon. While they gaslight him and ask him a million questions, good girl Miki comes downstairs, wraps her arm around Akira, telling Akira that he hasn't changed at all, that he's always been protective towards Miki, and everyone's anger subsides. Akira escapes to find Ryo, and Miki's given a good luck charm by one of the rap dudes. It's his earring. She says she wishes that she could give it to Akira, and she feels as though she'll never see him again. The main rap dude tells her to have faith in Akira. And on Akira's end, he attempts to quell an angry mob by explaining to them that everything they know is wrong regarding the demons. He begs them to stop killing and fighting each other. And in Christ-like fashion, Akira says that if they were to kill anyone, it should be him instead of each other. They all start to throw shit at him. Miki takes to Twitter to defend Akira and explains that his true character is pure, that his tears are real. When Akira cries, he cries for someone else. When he's sad, he doesn't cry for himself. If we had more people like Akira in the world, I think the world would be a better place. Crying for other people and thinking about other people. If it's a person with a heart like Akira's, no matter if they're demon or human, she'll accept them and love them unconditionally. And that peace will come if everyone believes that. While what Miki said about the world being a better place with more people like Akira is true, I also think that if more people were like her, we could say the same. If we were to tread this life with acceptance, forgiveness, understanding, it would be a lot more of a peaceful existence. Of course, that's not what life is, and it never will be, because we are imperfect, and we are much too human. There will always be divide. Even if we had all the answers in the world would just blow up, because there would be no balance, and that's just not how our world is wired to be. So after Miki says that on Twitter, we see waves on the internet and reality being made, as through Miki's innocence, she is quite literally a beacon of hope. People are coming out the closet as Devilman. A child runs up to Akira, holding him in an embrace, and it's interesting to me the way that the first people to go up to Akira in hopes of understanding him were children, because children are some of the least judgmental people in the world. They can be little assholes because they're curious, but they're not very judgmental. Usually to hate and to discriminate against others is taught, but children are innocent the same way that Miki is, which allows her to have hope and think so highly of people. The same way that Akira was at the beginning of the show before his transformation, when he just loved Ryo so much because that's all he had in his art, because he thought so highly of his childhood friend. The truth is, we will always have people like Ryo who thrive in chaos. We will always have people like the other humans in the show who are unforgiving because of the shit that they've been through, and I'm not going to tell you that that's justified either, because it's just human. It's just the way that the world works. After the kids hug Akira, people line up to apologize to him, holding him, attempting to help others in need at the scene. And the tender moment is destroyed by Koda and the group of demons who arrive to destroy Akira. A battle ensues and Akira fucks those demons up. In the next scene, an angry mob is brewing by Miki's house, and inside of the home, Miki and Miko are having a conversation. Miko acknowledges her hatred for Miki was fueled by a love for her. Instead of loving Miki and being a good friend over the many years of knowing each other, she let jealousy overtake her due to the fact that Miki was beautiful, well-rounded, and a talented person. Miko cries, explaining that she never realized those intense feelings of jealousy and anger stemmed from being in love with Miki. And they both cry, holding each other as Miki tells her it's okay. I've literally had this happen to me before, especially when I was a girl. But I've definitely had this happen to me before. Having friends that I cherished who would see me as some sort of competition, whether from a looks aspect or an artistic aspect, was always a pain in the fucking ass, because it will always end up being some sort of like dysfunctional lesbian lover that I would end up scissoring with 7 years in the future. So I felt like I feel like I get this. But the way that Miko confronts her emotions and realized that she did not handle them the proper way, resorting to hating Miki instead of befriending her and allowing themselves to grow as friends, is exactly what should have happened to me, and also what should be happening between Ryo and Akira. But of course, Ryo is the ultimate toxic twink in all of existence, so he would never have gone to this point. And also, he's a man. They take a little while for the frontal lobe to develop. But the girls are here being girls, like sorting through their shit. like mini therapy session figuring it the fuck out. Like, come on.
Okay, and it's future L. I just needed to cut in to say this off dome, off script, didn't even write this as a part of the script. But within the last like 4 episodes, you'll notice that every time we cut to Ryo in his apartment, he's literally just sitting around pondering his orbs, looking at pictures of him and Akira when they were children. Meanwhile, fucking Miki and Miko are over here having a therapy session. The world is literally ending. Akira had to like watch his fucking family die. He's over here trying to fucking fix the world. Like, everybody's busy doing something, and Ryo is just sitting around pondering his orbs, reminiscing and longing even. It's really important because this entire time, the entire series, Ryo was like, doesn't give a fuck about anybody, doesn't really give a fuck about Akira, really selfish, questionable morals, we don't know what the fuck is going on with him. Of course, when we find out, this will all be more hysterical. And of course, to see Ryo's care and fondness that he has for Akira is really important to point out, because we're gonna need that piece of information when we get to the final episode and the final scene of the final episode. Alright, back to the video.
However, this peaceful moment is broken by the angry mob attempting to break into the house. The gang of rappers defend the girls as they make their escape. Akira is now running, intent on finding Miki and relaying an important message to her. The message being that the reason Akira is able to retain a human heart is because she exists. The thing about hope is that we have a lot of it and we really don't want to run out of it. Even though Miki is the only person that's keeping Akira going, the goodness in her heart shows Akira that there are other humans like her. She's pure-hearted, genuine, good-intentioned, and innocent. Because of the fact that Miki is a beacon of hope and always has been, Akira has felt obligated to protect her and the humans slash Devilman who are similar to her. And it's a tragedy. Earlier in the script, I mentioned Miki asking Akira what was so bad about being innocent, to which he replied with silence. I mentioned it was dark, foreshadowing for things to come. Well, the boys in the rap group do not survive. Most of them are brutally murdered. Miki is riding on Miko's back away from the angry mob, but they're being shot at. Miko professes her love to Miki once more. Miki is launched off of Miko's back, and just like their running days, Miko passes the baton to Miki and begs her to run for her life as the angry mob catches up.
Miko! Miki! Run!
And when they do, Miko holds a gun to her head. Before Miko dies, she asks the angry mob this: what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be good? What is justice and what is right? I'd argue that this is the question Devilman poses with us time and time again. As she's murdered or takes her own life, surrounded by the angry mob with full intentions to kill her, one has to question if all of this violence is truly in the name of justice, and how it could possibly be good underneath that category when innocent people, or those who have good intentions despite their differences from you, are being sought out and brutally murdered. When is the point where we realize that needless violence under the guise of subjective justice can and has more often than not caused more harm than good? Something we realize time and time again through the brutality of war and the devastation that follows it. When Miko dies, it is not in vain. The moment she asks Miki for forgiveness, revealing her emotions and professing her love to Miki while they cried and held each other at the end of the world, was the moment that Miko had become the evolved, not only as a Devilman, but as a human, to put her differences aside and approach her own emotions and resentment with the intentions of resolving them without resorting to violence or wreaking havoc, to have hope in herself, to want change, to have hope in Miki when asking for forgiveness. Miki runs until she can't anymore. Because of her innocence, because of her hope, her love, her faith in humanity, and her faith in Devilman Akira, she was brutally murdered by the angry mob, decapitated with her head strung up on a skewer, the fire blazing around her as the angry mob waves dismembered body parts of her and her friends. The final beacon of hope destroyed. Akira's innocence leaving his heart completely. The world around him sinking into the final ages of darkness. Although the show already took a turn for the worse halfway through the series, the moment that Miki dies is the moment of true helplessness that's often creeped up on me while watching this show. And that's because the final beacon of hope has been snuffed out. Any semblance of joy, of hopefulness leaving with her. And Akira weeps. The end of this episode destroyed me, as it's a small segment of Akira riding his bike while Miki is on the back holding on to him. And upon the first few watches, I didn't even know that this scene was here. When I rewatched it last year, literally around this time, it was the first time I noticed it, and I was a fucking mess, bro. I'm literally crying over this scene while I'm editing this video. What is wrong with me, bro? Look at my lawyer, dog. I'm going to jail, dude. I had already been crying since Miko died, but as this scene played, like, I just sobbed and I sobbed and I sobbed. And I was also, like, 2 weeks in on testosterone. And at the time, I was also delusionally in love with a girl who I think might be straight, which I'm sure didn't help. I just remember it being so tragic. Oh my god, rest in peace, Miki. If I can't find a girl like that within the next 5 years, I'm jumping off a cliff. So here we are, episode 10. And I cannot believe this journey we've been on, bitch. So let's get this over with. We start this episode with a flashback of Akira and Ryo's memories as they play and grow together. A prairie illuminated with bright, vibrant colors, blue sky, green grass, and it fades into the current state of the world, cold, decrepit, full of sorrow, darkness. Akira approaches Ryo, who seems to have been waiting for him there. Akira asks him why Ryo has betrayed the humans. And he tells Ryo that he's human too. Ryo replies by saying, "Actually, I'm not," revealing his true form to be none other than Satan himself. Ryo begins to explain to Akira that way back in the day, he had beef with God and was essentially thrown out of heaven. A story that we're already familiar with. Ryo gets to Earth, a place preoccupied by demons, and Ryo likes it there. So he's settled. But after a while, God wasn't really fucking with this either. So he destroyed the place and all the demons along with it. After millions of years, when Earth recuperates once more, what's left of the demons conjoins with humanity to continue on the path of survival. Ryo mentions also taking control of a human host. But the moment that happened, his memories and recollection of his past and who he was as Satan dissipated. Still, due to his role as Satan, he managed to survive it all and ends up on the shore of that prairie, and wouldn't you know, the first person he meets is none other than Akira Fudo. And we remember how Akira can read people, right? Like, how he can see people for who they really are, how they really feel. Well, he holds Ryo and tells him not to be afraid. Ryo says that even as a child, he was preparing to set this plan in motion. The plan of causing basically the rapture and human destruction through means of fear-mongering and using the demons and their differences to his advantage. And of course, when he says this line, he's looking right at Akira. He also mentions that God caught wind of this, and at some point he said that he supposes that God hates him. And look, I'm gonna give God some credit. This cracker right here, this twink of all twinks, he is no fucking good, bitch. He and the demons. He and the demons are demons and entities of evil for a reason, after all. Even if they experience love, such as Silene and her man, even if they yearn and have, like, concerns and nuance, let's look at it this way. The Devilmen are those that reject the demon inside of them, even if it's part of them. They do what's right, as much as they can, is what makes them Devilmen. It's what makes them pure. The good intentions of it all. That's why God didn't attempt to wipe any of them out. Or even Akira, who's like the blueprint of the Devilman, who's the strongest. So in this scene, Ryo tells Akira that he has no other choice but to live with the demons, since all the humans are going to perish and die one way or another. He says, "Come, Akira, let's live in the new world together," which is mad gay. But Akira's pissed. He's like, "Bro, you took everything from me." Akira's fed up too, because he says, "I'd like to cry for you, but I literally have no more tears left for you." It's giving Ariana. Ryo insists that he doesn't want to fight Akira, but now Akira does not give a single fuck about that, bro. He says that he'll drag Ryo down to hell with him. And again, I'm gonna say one more thing, Akira's not going to hell. All of this, killing devils, becoming a devil, was Ryo's fucking fault. And Ryo's intention and plan for Akira. Akira, who was none the wiser about what the fuck was going on until it was far too late. And despite his predicament, he always did the right thing. It breaks my heart that Akira is like convinced that he'll be going to hell for any sin that he's committed, when this whole thing is Ryo's fault, and everything that Akira's done has been with good intentions and a pure heart. And then with an earnest need and wants to help the world around him, whether initially it was by helping Ryo, to then doing what he could to help other Devilmen, and then humanity itself. Like, baby, you're not going to hell. You're gonna get a nice cottage in the prairie with your name on it, where Miki and all your loved ones will be waiting for you. I'll make sure of it. So Akira and Ryo depart for the time being. Akira saying that when they meet again, it's on like fight night. Akira buries what's left of Miki, and the other Devilmen rally behind him, saying that they're coming together after hearing Miki's words via the post that she made on social media. Akira says that he's going to get rid of all the demons and make them pay for what they've done, and the Devilmen are ready to do whatever he asks. The next few scenes are a literal montage of the world continuing to deteriorate via extreme warfare and the demons killing and eating the final remaining humans themselves. And then Ryo and Akira engage in a full-on battle. Akira loses multiple limbs. Each time he does, a Devilman is willing to give back in the fight. Akira asking to use them as the means of surviving. And this is what happens when you do good in the world. You get good back, bitch. You get good back. Like, all of them were there for him, too. So, some time passes, and I'm gonna go off on a bit of a tangent. I like this show's ambiguity because Akira and Ryo could have been fighting for weeks, months, or even years, similarly to how time moves in the Bible. I think that's kind of cool. So, everyone dies. Even Psycho fucking Jenny dies. Good riddance. And while Akira fights for his literal life, he sits at a dinner table in his form before the transition to demon and is surrounded by his family and his friends. In the following scene, all his friends as kids pass the baton to each other, and when Akira goes to pass it to Ryo, Ryo never picks the fucking baton up. And this is on a loop while they're fighting. And until the world is nothing but a wide open vista of a blue sky and some red ass water. Ryo is speaking to Akira, and we have like a bit of a flashback that shows Ryo's coldness and resentfulness as a child during those days that he spent with Akira when they were kids. His distrusting of every human, but the slither of listening to Akira attempting to guide this foreign creature in a human world, essentially. We also get to rewatch the scene where Akira tells Ryo that he's crying too after presumably killing the animal that was already sick. Ryo says that when they were kids, he wasn't sure what Akira meant. Love isn't real, there's no such thing, therefore there's no sorrow, or that's what I thought. After saying this, Ryo turns to Akira and asks why he's the only one speaking. It's only then that Ryo realizes Akira, his best friend, and essentially the being that he loved the most in all of eternity, is dead. The lower half of his body being completely dismantled from him. And Ryo calls out to Akira. He says he's feeling something and asks a cold, lifeless Akira what these feelings are. What is this, Akira? Feel what I'm feeling right now. But Akira cannot. He is dead. Ryo begs for Akira not to leave him, but it's far too late. He holds Akira's lifeless body, and the episode and series come to a devastating close. It's much too late. It has been for a long time now. And only now, when it is much too late, is when Ryo is realizing Akira has been and would have been capable of understanding Ryo's emotions, if only he were not such a vindictive asshole. It took for Akira to physically no longer be a part of Ryo's life for Ryo to understand the true gravity of what he's done. And you might be thinking to yourself, why? What was all of this for? Why did Ryo do all of this? The answer is quite simple. Daddy issues. In the final episode, as mentioned, Ryo finally spills his beans and opens up about his past, talking about how he and God had a quarrel and a beef of the sorts, causing Ryo to get kicked out of heaven and attempt to settle on Earth. Then continuing the story about God's continuous shooting down Ryo's plans to wreak havoc wherever he went. Yeah, see, Ryo never forgave God for that. Never understood why God was always on his ass, internalized that shit, and took it with him for the next couple thousand years until he finally decided it was the right time to destroy everything, all in the vein of creating a new world for the demons to live in. If Ryo would have found it in his heart to forgive God, or at least understand God and the reason for his doings, none of this shit would have happened. And you might be thinking, well, God still find a way to mess with Ryo through existence. And to that I say, he only did so when Ryo was up to no good. Take in this existence, for example. The one where Ryo and Akira know each other. God never appeared until shit really started to hit the fucking fan in the world, and until the devil started to cause catastrophic destruction. If Ryo would have taken any time at all to sort through his emotions and ask himself why he was doing all the things that he had done before episode 8, I must know myself, there's a possibility that he could have led a peaceful existence with his companion, his friend, who loved him dearly, Akira, as opposed to killing everything and everyone that Akira loved in order to court him into being his lover and sweet yaoi prince in the new demon world. And I want to look you in the eye and tell you that Ryo's logic is nonsensical and insanity, but people think this way. People who have like no sense of self, that look to someone they admire, are absolutely likely to take things from that person that they admire in hopes of alienating them and forcing them to rely on the antagonizer, as opposed to just being upfront about their emotions and also why they may have acted negatively in the past towards feelings of love, romantic or not. And this is also why Miko is such an important character, because she is one who looked into herself in a timely manner and realized that her anger and resentment for Miki came through love. In a sense, she forgave Miki for being perfect, for taking her name, whether Miki asked for it or not. And because of that, it allowed Miko to wholeheartedly love Miki and for them to grow closer, to develop a real profound bond towards the end of the series. Ryo's infinite tirade of self-sabotage, however, his lack of self-awareness, quite literally caused the end of the world. And the end of his world being Akira. And I think he could probably feel this way for a person too, whose self-sabotage is so bad that they push away the one person who was willing to put up with their bullshit, the one person who had hope in them, the one person who believed in them where nobody else did. And I have a very similar experience of a time where my lack of forgiveness literally drove me to wreak havoc and send me to the psych ward, which I guess is just the diet version of literally sinking the world into Armageddon and killing everybody on the planet. It's a story that I deem the cuckoning. In high school, I had a boyfriend who abused me in every sense of the word, verbally, sexually, emotionally, physically. Once I dumped him, my best friend since middle school started dating him, and I was torn up about it for obvious reasons. So after a couple years passed and she decided to reach out to me for some reason, despite still dating my abuser, I had devised a plan to basically sleep with her and then ghost her directly afterwards. By doing this, I'd be cucking my rapist while also making her pay for the fact that she knowingly dated a guy who abused me. I wanted the both of them to feel just as fucking shitty and small as I had felt, as they had made me feel. And bitch, I did do all that, but I was eventually publicly outed for it on social media and got my ass Baker acted and thrown into the mental hospital because I quite literally wanted to kill myself instead of deal with the repercussions of my actions. All because I couldn't really forgive or let go of what these crusty heifers did to me. If I would have forgiven or let go or moved past the situation, I would have saved myself a trip to the mental hospital, and I would have saved a lot of the people around me from the next few months of processing some real heartbreak and fucked up ass emotions, all of which came from the incident deemed the cuckoning. I think it's reasons and cases like this where we learn that forgiveness is important.
Alright, I know this video is long enough, but I just want to preface this next part by saying that part of it is theory in a way, and also that we're just going to be dipping our toes into some religious talk. When I first made this script, I did try to avoid talking about religion excessively, but considering the anime that we're talking about, it's nearly impossible. So if you have any sort of religious trauma and don't want to hear about it, I understand. You could skip to this part of the video. But I do think that you should hear me out, considering the fact that I also have religious trauma that I am currently and actively trying to come to terms with and even undo. And what would be an analysis of Devilman Crybaby if we weren't bringing up religion? As for the theory part, I started this segment by saying Jesus forgives us to give us a second chance that other humans might not when it comes to forgiveness, but that's honestly and wholeheartedly a theory. I don't think the Bible says that anywhere. I am, however, well aware that the reason Jesus forgave us and died for our sins was so that we could have a second chance in redemption with him and our relationship with him. I just wanted to clarify that as someone who was born and raised and taught as a Christian and who learned a lot about the Bible growing up as a child. I didn't want anybody to point a finger and be like, "You heathen, God cares not for our mortal squabbles with each other." So yeah, just want to say I definitely understand the history of why Jesus truly died on the cross in forgiving us for our sins to that extent, but the main reason that I say the Lord forgives us where man cannot in this video is because at the end of the day, our lives go hand in hand with whatever plan God has for us and within our existence itself, if of course you are religious and do believe in that kind of thing. So part of me feels like it really isn't that far of a stretch to say that maybe God also gives us a second chance where an unforgiving man, justified or not, wouldn't. A lot like when a Catholic goes into a confessions booth, right? They're going in there with some heavy shit to talk about and be forgiven for. But whoever or whatever they may have wronged, well, what if they didn't just forgive this person? And what if they don't ever forgive this person? So here they are, at the booth, asking for that forgiveness, whether it's to alleviate their mental turmoil and take some kind of accountability, or to be forgiven and be accepted by the glory of God through that repentance and what have you. So yeah, just wanted to clarify that, moving on with the video.
Jesus, right? The Jesus Christ. He died on the cross for our sins because he wanted us to be forgiven by him if there was nobody else to forgive us. He cared so much about the importance of forgiveness that he gave up his only life to forgive humanity, so long as forgiveness was what they were to seek. And when Christ forgives, it's because he thinks that we are all worth it. The same way Akira forgave the people as he thought all of them were worthy of change, worthy of love, and just lost in the chaos and the state of the world. Akira, like Jesus, believes that we all have a chance at redemption. So the interesting thing about humans and what's interesting about Devilman Crybaby is the way that it doesn't shy away from showing us the fact that humans are unforgiving. Humans are sensitive and emotional, and we hold a lot of fears, which are justified because sometimes we are so scared and so angry we do not want to forgive. We do not want to let it go. And it's usually a way to protect ourselves. It's a way to reassure ourselves that we will not be letting bad things back into our lives. And in a way, I think God understood that because he knew we were only human at the end of the day. And he knew that there would be times where we would not be capable of truly forgiving those who have wronged them. And in some cases, where it is rightfully so. That's where his job comes in. He'll always take the hit for us. God created that loophole, that second chance for us, for those who will never be forgiven by our fellow man, because God knew that we are fickle and emotionally charged. There's a quote from my favorite video game. I mentioned it earlier, and it goes like this.
The Lord forgives everything, but I'm just a prophet, so I don't have to. Amen.
And yes, amen, brother. I'll drink to that. But I also wanted to share something with y'all. Would you like some sort of alternative to forgiving those who have wronged you? Sometimes forgiving somebody shitty for the harm that they've caused you is a real tragedy. For many, it could seem borderline impossible. After all, your feelings and emotions are valid, whether others may think so or not. So, radical acceptance might be the answer for you. I can't forgive you for the pain that you've caused me, but I can accept the very nuanced and flawed condition of what it is to be human. By doing this, I'm able to put our differences aside, just enough to be cordial and no longer harbor the pain and anguish in my heart of wanting to jump you every time I see you. This is objectively great. Originally, the script pointed to forgiveness as the only way that you could let go of conflict you've had with someone, but it really didn't sit right with me because I'm not Christ-like and there are people in this life that I haven't technically forgiven. You know, God is always going to know what you did wrong. He's there to forgive you. However, when it comes to traumatic shit that people have done to me, as mentioned, I do have a hard time forgiving. So radical acceptance, which is something that I learned about in group therapy, has really helped me to look at things from a bird's eye view and understand that we are all really fucked up and complicated. And that some of the harm that others have caused us could also just be a direct result of the things that they've learned, the way that they were raised, brain damage they harbor, or pain inside themselves that they harbor and feel the need to lash out onto others.
So by living my life with radical acceptance, it's not really forgiving, but it is understanding. And that kind of clarity can be so refreshing instead of blaming myself for something that someone did to me. And also instead of telling myself that I have to forgive them in order to be able to move on and get better within my own soul. While the way that people have grown up and the way that their lives cannot be an excuse for their terrible actions or treating others by tormenting them, it does make everything a little bit easier to understand, a little bit easier to not take so personally. And then it kind of becomes something that rolls off the shoulders, a blip in the past, a lesson to learn from, albeit an annoying lesson, and sometimes it goes from annoying to the most traumatizing shit that a human could experience. But it's things that we have to go through, that we do go through, because we do not live in a perfect world, so we must make do. Something sad that I forgot to point out is that people also don't always have the strength to even take accountability and seek forgiveness from you in the first place. Some people will die thinking that they never did anything wrong in this life. And that, my friends, is usually another piece of humanity that radical acceptance helps me cope with. Even if you think you did nothing wrong, but I know what you did to me, I don't know why you act that way. So I'm gonna just radically accept that something went wrong during your stages of frontal lobe development. Something went wrong, maybe you bumped your head as a kid, but that's not on me, you know? And I could acknowledge it and move on. To go off on a bit more of a tangent, when I watch Devilman, I tend to wonder how all of this could have been avoided, but with that, I tread some pretty existential waters. Because of course, the devil is the antithesis of selfishness, and that's just the way that things are. In a perfect existence, he would have never gotten kicked out of heaven for being a hater, and in a perfect existence, maybe Satan could have easily just made amends with God by asking for forgiveness in the vein of wanting to be on good terms with him, you know? But this is just life, and the battle of good and evil, God being good, evil being the devil. And this is also why we tend to meet people who shadow these archetypes. Granted, with humanity, things are not so black and white, but I truly believe that when you hit a certain age, when that frontal lobe is developed, there is some real work that needs to be done in order to keep ourselves in check. You know, what are your intentions? What kind of person do you want to be? What kind of message are you putting out in the world? What kind of energy do you want to share with others? And are you here to help or are you here to hurt? When you're aware of good and bad and the power that you have in the world, it's important to be responsible with that. I think it's important to be good and do good, like Akira and like Miki. And we can go back to Miki's quote where she says that if there were more people like Akira in the world would be a better place. Lord knows that that isn't easy either. Times where I want to tweak and rip someone's head off. Times where somebody comes at me crazy with like a fucked up energy and I want nothing more than to reciprocate that energy, but I tend to ask myself what that's for or what the point is even. A lot of times, while people aren't even considering me, that radical acceptance kicks in and I think, well, what is this person going through to come at me crazy like this? And how is it gonna help if I come back at them with more fire and more anger? Like, when has that ever solved anything? We see that the answer is never. Between day-to-day life with family, former friends, and then dipping into more serious shit like all-out wars and genocides occurring because nobody is jumping up to see eye to eye, to have compassion, to be better, you know? It's all based in selfishness, whether it's wanting to take your land, wanting to take your shit. It's always been this way. But you get back what you put into the world, and in a cold world that sometimes isn't even too far off from what we see in the last episodes of Devilman, it's so important to tread life with goodness, good intentions, and compassion for others. Even if we're flawed, it's okay to be flawed, you know? Just try your hardest, because at the end of the day, there are so many other places where there is pain, there is chaos, and there doesn't need to be more added to that. In conclusion, Devilman Crybaby tells a tale as old as time. The battle of good and evil, but with a certain lens of realism. That lens being nuance. which is something that's so important to the human experience itself. From each character, good or bad, we are constantly witnessing this nuance at play. We see Akira, the good character, constantly wrestle himself in order to be as good as possible, whether that's through fighting urges to harm others, or giving in to desire, or simply just upholding his hope in humanity. There's Rio, the bad character, who, in the very end, despite all of the chaos that he purposefully caused, must come to terms with the fact that he does experience emotion to an extent. Emotions he rejected, such as sadness, pain, and love, and therefore having to acknowledge the fact that everything he knew and loved was destroyed by nobody other than himself. We have Miki, a person who had so much hope and trust in her fellow humans, gullibility which may have led to clouded judgment that caused her to be brutally murdered by the same humans she trusted and believed in so intently. There's Miko, a girl so jealous, she was willing to do anything to prove that she could be above and better than Miki. Anything which ended up being self-reflectance, causing her to look deep within herself in order to understand where jealousy were coming from in the first place. In this show, we see humans constantly fighting each other, while accusing each other of being demons, going as far as to destroy the world they once knew under the guise of justice. On the flip side, we see the devils coming together, defending each other, and protecting each other, all in the vein of dominating the human world. And then, of course, the Devilmen, doing everything in their power with attempts to maintain order, acceptance, and to build the bridge between the humans and the devils in order to avoid humans' total and inevitable annihilation. But what does this say about us? What does this show say about you and I? When the credits finally roll and we're taken back to the Netflix home screen, what are we left with? Outside of disassociate and rot on your bed, wondering what it was that you just consumed, I think that there's only one thing you really can do, and that's to evolve. It's to look inside of yourself and acknowledge your self-worth, not only as a human, but as a human with nuance and complex and maybe even complicated emotions. Because once you find your self-worth, and realize that you're worthy of good life and good things in your life, you then are capable of seeing the self-worth of everybody around you, even if they can't see their own self-worth themselves. But through that, I truly believe that you're able to tread the world with a different kind of kindness. To realize that you have self-worth and to know that you are worthy of good is the most valuable thing that a human can have. In our show Devilman, many of the characters do realize their self-worth. And with that comes the clarity of understanding the world and the people around them. Part of this is shown from the beginning, through Miki and Akira's relentless hope and faith that they have in their fellow humans. If the two of them and the friends that they share have constant capability of having hope and doing good, this, throughout the show, has shown them that other humans are capable of being the same way. No matter how fucked up they may have been at the beginning of the story, and no matter how fucked up the world ends up being when it begins to devolve into complete madness. Our dearest Miko, for example, realizes her self-worth when she confronts Miki about her emotions and her love for Miki. And with this confrontation of her negative emotions of jealousy, she realizes that she's worthy of Miki's love and worthy of Miki's forgiveness. Through that clarity and understanding of herself, she, in a way, is transformed. And then she's able to embrace this overwhelming amount of love coming from not only Miki, but within herself. On the flip side, we do see characters who do not see their self-worth and do not look inside of themselves. The track star Coda, who sides with the demons in the final episode and dies in vain. A character who was objectively loved by his peers, and a character who felt emotions intensely, only to throw it all away for selfish, misguided needs, and a cause of which was only intent on continuing the reign of chaos in an already broken world. And of course, Rio. Cold and calculated Rio, who somehow still could not calculate the fact that he had a love for Akira that was so much more important than his role as Satan, than his plans to destroy humanity, only to be left with nothing. A character who was shown compassion more than once from his best friend Akira, only to be left to pick up the pieces all by himself at the very end of the entire world. Now, what all these parties have in common, I think, is that life is kind of fucked up for every single one of them. All of them are experiencing some sort of pain and torment. But at each point in their own timelines, choices have to be made. And there's something that they definitively end up standing for by the time of their inevitable deaths. But what's insane is that just like this anime, we're the same way. Life is trying, it's taxing, it's tiring, but every single one of us has a decision to make and a lot of work to do when it comes to our purpose in this one life we get to live. Sometimes some of us are born into a life that is much more cruel than those around us, but that doesn't give us any less of a responsibility to be good and do good. But it also doesn't make us any less worthy of having good or wanting good things. Life can make you think that you're only deserving of bad things because of where it might place you sometimes. But let it be known that your background or where you come from does not define you as inherently bad or any less worthy than the person beside you. And with the discovery of self-worth, I truly do think that any person can pull themselves out of the hole of negativity, the downward spiral of self-sabotage and pain. I think that self-worth comes from evolving and moving forward. And in order to move forward, you have to fuck up a lot. And also look inside of yourself when you are fucking up. But also to look inside of yourself and acknowledge when you're wrong is not really easy for humans to do. There are some people who can't do it, and then there are some people who can do it. And through being able to look at yourself, not only the good, but also all of the flaws and what might be considered ugly, is when a person can truly evolve. But others may never hit that level or point of reflection. Even if you're like Akira and can see the good for a person where they can't see it, a lot like I mentioned earlier, to change for the better, you really gotta have to want it. And I truly believe that. Being someone who was in therapy from the ripe age of 7 years old, I can safely tell you that there was never a therapist who said, you need to get better, and then I just got better. It took a lot of screwing up, making mistakes, and a lot of pain before I hit that point of realizing that I wanted to be happy as I possibly could be in this life. I wanted to do better, and I knew that I was worthy of good things. But in order to keep those good things going, I also realized that I had to work really hard for it. I wanted it, you know, and that's what got me to the point of some real changes being made. And again, it's not easy. It wasn't easy, and it's not like it's gonna be easy forever, you know? I'm still doing work. We have a lot of work to do. But I think once you get it, once you reach that point of self-worth and wanting to do better and wanting better things in life, it really is so much easier to just tread the world with kindness, but to also be capable of understanding many of the other silly little humans that preoccupy this earth. I've said a lot of times before in high school as an edgy teenager that I hate people and I hate humans, but in reality, I think I really love them. I'm fascinated by them. I've learned a lot since the birth of this video, and something I've come to realize is that I enjoy just basking in the human experience, and also the idea that we are just like these really fucked up little creatures, but we're all trying so desperately to find our way in a world that's scary, confusing, and oversaturated. This was my year of yes. I did everything this year. Anytime somebody invited me to something, anytime there was some kind of junction, I was always gonna be there so long as people were telling me about it. And through that, I've just been able to connect with so many different people and talk to so many different people and hear so many different stories about childhoods, where people come from, what they've done as occupations, just so much. And I don't know, I think there's something that's been really special and eye-opening when it comes to the fact that I've been able to just sit down and really soak up all this information. It teaches you a lot. It teaches you a lot. But I think that came with, again, the discovery of my own self-worth, you know? Realizing that I'm not alone in this world, and also wanting to hear about other people's experiences to clarify that, to validate the fact that I'm not alone, that I'm not struggling alone, even if it feels like that a lot of the times. And honestly, it can just be really beautiful to see when you dip your toes into people's ongoings like that, to see the things that we feel, the stories we have, the love that we make, the initiative and drive we experience, and most importantly, the things that we create. I love media. I love comics. I love art. I love music, movies, manga, anime, and I loved this one in particular so much that in my final stages of frontal lobe development, it really caused me to think so critically about what it was that I was consuming, to think so critically about the human condition and how important it is to truly be aware of the things that we're doing in this life, to be wary of the way that we move, and to be purposeful when we move, and most importantly, to do so in a positive manner, because we quite literally need each other to survive, and the energy we give out is important in that way. It's important that we stay connected and help each other. It's important that despite our flaws and differences in backgrounds, we are here for each other. And it's not easy. As mentioned earlier, there are times where I do want to tweak out. I do want to lose my temper. I do want to literally go insane. And in worse times, it's gotten to that point. Similarly to my story of the cuckening. Similarly to how in the past I've destroyed my life and the lives of others around me because I was so vengeful, so angry, so unforgiving. But with the knowledge that I have now, and obviously with the growth that has occurred over the last couple of years, I don't think I'd ever get to that point ever again. You know, I try my hardest to move with purpose now, and I've definitely gained a semblance of self-worth over the last couple of years, even though it's been hard. Now, we're gonna wrap this up very soon. There's some things that I've heard over the last year that I found it imperative to share with you before I ended the video. Not too long ago, I went to a trans remembrance memorial, and I'd never done anything like that in my life. I got invited to perform and share some poetry, but before we honored trans life as it is, we took some time to honor those trans people who were no longer with us. At some point, while people were giving speeches and sharing experiences, one of the trans women was asked if she could give her younger self any advice, what would it be? And what she said was to make mistakes, to keep fucking up, and make as many mistakes as possible. And it resonated with me so deeply because of all the countless blunders I've made and the times that I've just had shit blow up in my face or fall apart. And obviously, most of the time when things like that happen, it's tumultuous, it's painful, it's uncomfortable, it could even be embarrassing. But I always ask myself, what is the lesson here? What can we take away and learn from this so that we do better next time? How did we fuck up? What did we do wrong? and how can it be avoided in the future? And that is important. It's so important to be wrong, but to also be able to acknowledge when you are wrong with the intent to change and do better. And now, something, secondly, that I heard from my sensei at jiu-jitsu. There had been this time when I first started training jiu-jitsu. I was going through a lot. This was a beautiful year, but it was a really rough one for me. I wasn't as serious about jiu-jitsu as I am now, and I'm sure that this day that I went to class, I didn't even want to go to class. I had to fight myself tooth and nail to get out of bed and do so. But at the end of the class, after all those endorphins were released, we were covered in sweat and lining up to wrap it up for the day, our sensei looked at us and thanked us for coming to class so diligently. And he said to us all, this right here is not easy. Good things are not easy. Drugs, alcohol, junk food, bugging out, that's really easy to do. The things that are bad for us are easy and attainable as hell, especially in this day and age. But this right here, staying on your health, coming to train, trying your best, it's hard. And it's why people tend to stray away from doing good. So I'm proud of all of you. It made me emotional. I shed a tear or two. I felt like he was directly speaking to me in that moment. Considering what we've been talking about throughout this video, you know, the unspoken battle of good and evil and all of its nuances, it's safe to say that this is undoubtedly true, and I hope to take these words with me wherever I go. Being someone that constantly struggles with vices and addictions, my co-star always tells me, I know this is cringe, but my co-star always tells me that my Taurus placement is a result of me being a slave to my senses. And it's true, I like things that are bad for me. I like to get that like rush of the flesh. And it's so easy to fall into bad patterns and habits. But training hard, doing jiu-jitsu, and wanting to take steps that are good for me and my health and my body is just one of the steps in the right direction. I don't know what the hell I'm going to be doing in like 20 years from now, but I know that right now I'm trying my hardest, you know? I can't promise you that this realization or the discovery of one's self-worth will make your life better. It can even be more painful when you see others around you who have yet to find their own self-worth, who, a lot like Rio, get in their own way constantly and miss out on good things because of it. People who will end up leading lonely lives because they cannot see good in themselves, even though you can see it. But it really does help you navigate your own emotions in life. And that is important because it's the one thing that you really do have control over. Regardless, you can always be kind, and that might be good enough in showing others the softer side of life and temporary joys. I will say, however, that relentless positivity can be confusing for other people. And we also talked about how earlier others might hate you for relentless positivity because they could not possibly understand how someone can be so positive despite the state of the world. And to that I say, keep energy suckers at arm's length, because you're human too. Pray for people and hope that they find the truest form of love someday, which is the love from within. Wow, alright, in final conclusion, time and time again, humans are drawn to stories about life itself. You can make a murder mystery with an alright story and some twerked up baddies, but it's never gonna stick or impact the masses the way a specific kind of story would. The story of characters who are flawed and simply finding their way in life, interacting with those around them, and learning things through trial and error. One who experiences pain, joy, laughter, angst, sadness, excitement, drugs, alcohol, sex, fucking, crying, death, arguing, learning, understanding. And while the conclusion isn't always a nice one, there are a lot of things that are picked up on the way that maybe were nice and that were maybe there to teach you a little something about yourself and the world around you. All this to say, Devilman Crybaby is a masterpiece. It's a wild, wacky, intense show that does just so happen to have twerked up baddies, but that will have you bawling your eyes out and questioning everything you know nonetheless. It's a show about self-worth. the importance and power of having compassion and understanding about what it means to be human and why being human is so important and powerful, even if we feel weak and meaningless at times. It's a show that's taught me a lot upon first viewing in 2018, and a show that I learned something new from every time my masochism gene kicks in and I decide to rewatch it all over again. It's a tale as old as time and the story of good and evil, and the fact that the concept of good and evil is not always as black and white as people make it out to be, and as us sentient beings tend not to be. I urge you to watch it if this video hasn't convinced you enough already. And as there's definitely a lot that I leave out, but you can go ahead and find out for yourself what that might be. And be sure that if you watch it, you share it with anybody who loves anime or to be mentally and emotionally challenged, generally speaking. But that's enough out of me. Please be good and do good like Akira and Miki. Take care of yourselves, and hopefully I will see you guys sooner than later. It's Al from the future again. I don't even know where the fuck I'm gonna fit this in the video. I just had to gush. I'm sorry I'm coming over here with butthole eyes. I'm spiraling. But holy fuck, dude, I love the intro of this anime. Oh my fucking god. Like, it is something that I won't skip. It is something that I won't skip. I remember the first time I watched it, I was like, what is this weird-ass song? What is this goofy-ass song? And then you let it rock, bro. And then you let it rock. It is so good. Like, the droning, mindless, and then, like, the dark themes. It basically gives everything away that occurs in the show, in the intro, but you wouldn't really know unless you go through the entire show and then go back and, like, really take a good look at that intro. I think the intro is beautiful. I think it's a beautiful intro. I think it's perfect. I think it's amazing the way it lays out the rest of the series. I love the colors. I love the dramatics of it all. It's so epic, dude. And I swear, like, it gives me goosebumps every fucking time I see it. Like, bro. It gives me goosebumps every time I fucking see it. It's so good, dude. It's so good. I fucking love cartoons.